She walked into the office thinking it was just another Monday. What she didn't know was that within the hour, her title, her office, and her dignity would be stripped away, downgraded from a respected project manager to answering phones at the front desk. No warning, no explanation. Just a cold email and a forced smile from HR. It wasn't just a demotion, it was humiliation served with a side of silence. Everyone in the company knew, but no one said a word. They just looked away as she packed up her things and moved to the receptionist's desk like nothing happened. But this wasn't just about ego. This was about something much bigger. Months earlier, she had pitched a concept during a team meeting. Small idea buried in a larger presentation about workflow automation. Her boss had brushed it off, barely looked at her slides. But now, as she sat at the front desk answering calls and scheduling lunch orders, she noticed something strange. That same boss was suddenly working late, making hushed calls and whispering about meetings with outside investors. It didn't take long before she realized he had stolen her idea. Word for word, blueprint, and all. And he was getting ready to file a patent under his own name. What he didn't expect was that she'd quietly been documenting everything. Every version of the idea, every timestamp, every email and internal draft she had ever written. She knew the system better than he did, and she wasn't just going to sit behind a desk and watch him take credit for her work. She had a plan, and it started with a single envelope. It's dropped into legal's mailbox right before the weekend. What happens next? Let's just say the receptionist wasn't as powerless as she looked. Her name was Maya. For 3 years, she'd poured her energy into that company leading projects, mentoring interns, staying late without being asked. She wasn't flashy about her ideas, but she knew how to solve problems. That automation patent idea. It had come to her after noticing how much time was being wasted in the logistics department. Smarter system could cut hours off everyone's week. When she first mentioned it during a strategy session, her boss, Darren, barely acknowledged it. He laughed it off, called it too ambitious, and moved on. Maya thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. Because Darren hadn't forgotten, he just didn't want to share credit. While Maya was juggling front desk calls and calendar invites, he was polishing up her concept and preparing to present it as his own. The twist. He didn't know Maya had kept everything: notes, mock-ups, even a recorded voice memo she had sent herself months earlier, laying out the original idea. And now that she was sitting quietly at reception, she had more time than ever to connect the dots. She started noticing the patterns. Darren was slipping up. He'd forward emails to the wrong people, leave documents half-closed on the printer. One day, a draft patent application was accidentally left in the shred pile. Maya read every line. It was her system exactly how she designed it. He had even copied her diagrams. But Maya didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she started documenting everything with even more care. She visited a patent consultant in secret, took legal advice from an old college friend. She began stitching together a quiet case behind the scenes. No outbursts, no drama, just quiet calculation. What Darren didn't realize was that the receptionist he thought he'd buried had already started writing her comeback, and this time her name would be the only one on the patent. Maya kept playing the parts, smiling politely at clients, taking lunch orders for the executive team, and nodding along during awkward elevator rides. But underneath the calm exterior, she was watching everything. She noticed how Darren grew more nervous by the day, constantly checking his phone, rushing out of meetings, and avoiding eye contact whenever their paths crossed. The more he pushed the patent forward, the more careless he became. He probably thought she was still too shocked or too scared to fight back. But that's where he miscalculated. Behind the scenes, Maya's quiet case was growing stronger. She had built a complete timeline with emails, calendar invites, meeting notes. and early prototypes she had saved in cloud storage. She even found a voice recording from a brainstorming session. She led her voice explaining the same system. Darren now claimed as his own. But instead of confronting him directly, she decided to wait and let him get deeper into the lie. Meanwhile, another subplot was quietly unfolding. Priya, an analyst from the finance department, started striking up small conversations at the front desk. She had always admired Maya's work but never had a reason to speak up. That changed when she accidentally came across a budget breakdown. Darren had submitted one that included suspicious consulting payments and inflated research costs. It didn't add up, and Priya could sense something wasn't right. When she carefully brought it up with Maya, the two quickly connected the dots. Now Maya wasn't alone. With Priya's help, she began to trace Darren's entire trail: misused company funds, NDA breaches, even emails hinting at a secret investor pitch. This wasn't just idea theft anymore. 'Twas corporate fraud wrapped in arrogance. But they needed more proof, something undeniable, something that would force the board to pay attention. So they kept digging. Even though they knew time was running out, Darren's patent filing date was just weeks away. And Maya knew one thing for sure: he beat her to it. He'd lock her out of her own invention forever. Maya's heart raced as the days ticked down. Every minute, Darren moved closer to submitting the patent under his name. He was confident, careless even, walking through the office like he owned it. And why wouldn't he? On paper, he looked like the innovator. He had the title, the access, and the years of upper management. Maya, meanwhile, was still answering phones and smiling through it all. But what no one realized was that beneath that receptionist's desk, she had turned her workspace into a war room. Each night after hours, Maya stayed back just a little longer. She organized files, cross-checked timestamps, and highlighted inconsistencies. In Darren's patent draft, Priya managed to sneak her financial report into the internal audit team's queue without setting off alarms. It was risky. One wrong move, and they could both lose their jobs. But neither of them cared anymore. The truth was too big to ignore. It wasn't just about one stolen idea. Darren had been quietly funneling funds and credit for months, maybe even years. And now he was one step away from cashing in big. The breaking point came the day a calendar invite hit Maya's inbox by mistake. Darren had accidentally included her in a private meeting titled Investor Patent Preview. It was set for Friday morning with an outside VC firm. That was the moment Maya knew he was ready to go public. Once he pitched it, the story would spread, and it would be his name etched into every headline. Maya and Priya had one shot left. Everything they had gathered, every shred of evidence, had to be perfectly timed. They drafted an anonymous report and sent it to legal, HR, and the board of directors just hours before the meeting. Then Maya did something she hadn't done. In weeks, she requested time on the executive calendar. Friday arrived. Darren walked into the glass-walled conference room, oblivious. Maya sat quietly at the front desk, eyes locked on the clock. In just a few minutes, everything would either fall apart, fall perfectly into place. The conference room door clicked shut behind Darren as he began his pitch, confidently flipping through slides filled with graphs, projections, and her stolen diagrams. From the lobby, Maya couldn't hear a word, but she didn't need to. She knew exactly what he was saying, right down to the phrasing, because he was reciting the work she'd lived and breathed for over a year. But just as she waited for the moment everything would shift in her favor, her phone buzzed. It was Priya. The message was short. Emergency. He filed the patent early. Yesterday. Check the public register. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the link. There it was, filed under Darren's name with no mention of her. Not even in the footnotes. He had jumped the timeline. Somehow, he'd sensed they were closing in and made his move ahead of schedule. that changed everything. The board wouldn't care about internal reports now. Investors wouldn't ask where the idea came from once it was stamped and approved by the patent office. He had outpaced them, and now her evidence could be dismissed as nothing more than professional jealousy. For a moment, Maya felt her stomach drop. Everything she'd worked toward was slipping away in real time. But then, something caught her eye on the filing error. A signature mismatch on the technical diagram page. She zoomed in and looked again. Darren had forged the submission too quickly and used the wrong credentials from a previous consultant who hadn't worked on this version of the project. That was it. A mistake that big could void the entire application, but as she stood to act, two suited men stepped out of the elevator and approached the front desk. One of them showed a badge. "We're looking for Darren Malik," he said calmly. "We have questions about an anonymous complaint involving intellectual property fraud and financial misreporting." Maya blinked. That wasn't in the plan. Someone else had sent a report, and suddenly she realized she and Priya weren't the only ones watching him all along. Maya watched as the two men disappeared into the conference room, the door clicking shut behind them. For the first time in weeks, the lobby was quiet. No ringing phones, no rushed footsteps, just silence thick with anticipation. A few minutes passed, then 10. She stayed seated, trying not to let hope cloud her judgment. She had no idea who else had filed that complaint or what evidence they had, but it had been enough to bring investigators straight to Darren's meeting. That meant something big. Inside the conference room, Darren's voice grew louder, defensive. Glass walls didn't hide the tension. Kaya's face went pale, arms gesturing wildly as the agents calmly asked him to sit. One opened a folder thick with documents, not Maya's. Someone else had built a case too, and it seemed even deeper than hers. A second whistleblower had come forward. Just then, the head of HR and the company's legal counsel entered the room, followed by the CTO. One by one, expressions changed. Eyes turned toward Maya through the glass, then back to Darren. He had no idea what hit him, because while he thought he'd silenced Maya with that demotion, he hadn't realized she wasn't the only one he had stepped on. Over the years, Darren had taken shortcuts, claimed credit, and cut people out of their own work. And now, all those buried voices had found a way back to the surface, dashed together by the end of the hour. Darren was asked to leave the building. No press, no confrontation. Just a quiet walk out with his belongings while the board prepared for emergency damage control. The unexpected twist. When Maya was called into the meeting that afternoon, it wasn't just to thank her. The company offered her a leadership position to rebuild the innovation team with her name officially listed as the sole inventor on the automation patent. But before she signed anything, she paused and asked one question. Who sent the second complaint? The legal advisor hesitated, then slid a folded note across the table. It simply read, "Took me years to find the courage. Thanks for going first. Former head of R&D." Maya smiled. She wasn't just reclaiming her idea, she was starting something bigger. Maya stared at the note in her hands for a long moment, the words settling in. She had no idea the former head of R&D had been watching, silently waiting for the right moment, but it made sense. Darren's rise had left a trail of silenced voices and overlooked talent. Maya had just been the latest in a long line, but now she had become the one who finally stood up and, unknowingly, gave others the courage to do the same. It wasn't just about reclaiming her stolen patent anymore. It had become something bigger, something that echoed through the company halls long after Darren's exit. Over the next few weeks, everything began to shift. The board initiated a quiet internal review, opening a confidential channel for past employees and team members to come forward. The results were eye-opening. Darren's behavior wasn't a one-time mistake, had been a pattern. But with the right people finally speaking up, the company began clearing the rot from its roots. Maya accepted the leadership role, but on her terms. She rebuilt the innovation team with fresh-eyes people who had been overlooked, passed up, or dismissed, simply because they didn't play politics. Priya was the first person Maya brought on board. Her sharp instincts and quiet persistence had made all the difference. And now she was leading operations for the new project line. Together, they relaunched the workflow automation system, this time under its rightful name, with Maya credited as the original inventor. The patent, once almost lost, was now officially listed under her ownership. Thanks to that signature error Darren had rushed through. But Maya didn't stop there. She introduced a mentorship program inside the company to protect fresh ideas and create a space where voices wouldn't be ignored. She knew how easy it was for talent to get buried behind closed doors. That wouldn't happen again, not on her watch. As for Darren, he vanished from the tech scene for a while. Word spread fast, and no respectable firm wanted his name on their brand. Maya never heard from him again, and she never needed to. Some battles are best left in the past once you've won. Looking back, Maya sometimes found it surreal. How a demotion meant to bury her turned out to be the spark that lit everything up. She had been sent to the front desk to fade into the background. But instead, she used that view to see the company more clearly than ever before. It wasn't power or title that gave her the upper hand. It was persistence, truth, and the choice to act when it mattered most. In the end, the real success wasn't just getting her patent back. It was proving that no matter how underestimated someone might be, the right idea in the right hands can change everything.